Trauma is something that many people suffer from, and a lot of our dogs suffer from trauma. So this ought to be really interesting to see his thoughts on trauma.
We're going to talk about trauma and some of the traumas that these dogs have had in their life. What is trauma? What isn't trauma? When is trauma good? When is hardship good? When do you have to create hardship because your dog had the easiest life ever?
All right, so it's already starting. Trauma is never good. Trauma is never good. I think he's trying to take hardship and trauma and putting those together and saying that if your dog's had an easy life, that they have to have hardship. In a roundabout way, I think he's trying to say, in order to build resilience, you have to help your dog process and work through stress. Stress and trauma, not the same thing.
This dog, sweetest dog in the world, she acts like a princess because she's had the greatest life in the world. From a great breeder to this giant house. She still jumps on people. She's like 8 years old. It's time to say knock it off to this dog who's had the greatest single life of a dog I can imagine.
So the dog is jumping at 8 years of age. Number one, jumping is a personal preference. It's not his right, my right, anybody's right to say if jumping is bad or good. It is a personal preference. This dog is not jumping at 8 years of age because it's been treated like a princess. I am glad that dog has been able to be treated like a princess. That is wonderful. If the dog isn't having any problems and any behavior issues, then who cares that the dog has been treated like a princess? You don't need to now start making life hard on this dog to somehow make it better. This is so ridiculous. Yeah, let's go.
You know how much this dog is with us? Half the year. Because his owner travels all the freaking time. Is that trauma? Might be. Probably was when he was younger and he was with us all the time. Probably affects him. Now he comes up and he needs attention. We have to give it to him constantly because he doesn't know where his home is, really.
Trauma is a situation that an individual finds overwhelming and distressing. It's also an event or repeated event that creates a potential threat to life. So a trauma is really going to be individually decided. If this dog spent his whole life going back and forth between this guy's location and his owner's, then it's probably not a trauma. It's probably something that the dog sees as a part of his life. If he does see it as a trauma, then we need to find a way to help the dog if he is feeling traumatized when he is having to board there. So, and the fact that he needs attention, needing attention isn't what a dog is going to do if they don't know where their home is, okay? More than likely, he's asking for attention because it's something that's positive to him, and he wants to find something positive in his environment, especially if he does see that the rest of the environment isn't very positive. So I don't see that asking for attention constantly is because the dog was traumatized and not knowing where his home is.
All my clients go, oh, he's probably hit by a man because he's a nervous man. No, that's not true. That's not necessarily true. It might not have even been trauma. Maybe a guy was kind of mean to him. I don't know if that's trauma. You know what is trauma?
So a man being mean to a dog can be trauma. It is going to depend a lot on what was going on with the dog, the age, the development of the brain, the history and relationship that this dog had with a guy. So I think it's, again, we look at trauma is individualized. So we can't say whether this dog felt traumatized by a man being mean or not. It's going to be the dog, and our job as professionals is to not discount the feelings and not discredit those emotions. Our job is to take those puzzle pieces and say, okay, where are we seeing problems? And these problems could be coming from this potential trauma that this dog faced. Is there something we can do about that?
being born at an outdoor facility at a great breeder's house, but it's outdoors. Hearing the other dogs constantly barking when the dog is 1 week old to 8 weeks old. That is sensory overload that affects the nervous system so deeply that it is horrible trauma. But yet nobody ever seems to think about that.
So I'm going to disagree with that this is extreme trauma. So we don't know enough. We don't know. It was the parents raised in the same environment. If that's the case, then the genetics are passed down and the neural pathway development can be encouraged. So if the pup is starting to learn at a week to 2 weeks old of where the ears are starting to open, that this barking is a part of their normal life because it is a part of normal communication, then it's not going to be overwhelming to the system because the system is adapting around it. Now, if this dog was raised in a nice, quiet home and then was put into a boarding situation and it was constant loud barking like a board and train facility, then yes, that dog's system can be very overwhelmed and it can be traumatizing because it is going to affect the nervous system. So there's some yes and no's here. I don't think being born that way and being in that type of facility or that type of environment is going to be traumatizing because that's what the dog is going to know.
Horrible, will affect them for the rest of their life. What about you bought a dog from Hungary, French Bulldog from Hungary, gets on a plane at 8 weeks old, 7 weeks old. The heat under a plane, the sound, the sensory overload sound. Dogs get off planes at 8 weeks old after 2 days on a plane from Europe. They are jacked up. 95% of them are completely messed up dogs. That is extreme trauma that most people don't think about.
I'm not sure why he keeps using the term extreme trauma because truly the person that is suffering from trauma, to them, it is extreme. I agree with him on this, though, that it is traumatizing for a puppy to be taken away from everything it knows, be put on a plane and flown across this country or this world or wherever. I completely agree with this. And it is definitely something that can affect them for the rest of their life. So we have to be very careful in understanding why we are transporting these puppies. Do we really need to transport these puppies? Is there a way that we can help the puppies physiologically deal with the process of being flown over?
Hit by a man is nothing compared to getting under a plane and thinking you're going to die for 2 days.
I love when the man says that being hit by a man isn't as traumatizing as being in the undercarriage of a plane. I think it's really an individual opinion there. So, yes, again, being on the plane can be very traumatizing for a lot of dogs. I disagree that the dog is jumping on there thinking it's going to die for 2 days. I don't think it has that concept. But also, we have to look at what dog is being flown over. If you're bringing in a working line dog who has had resilience bred into it genetically over and over and over again, that dog is going to have really good resilience, which means it's going to be able to handle the stress of being on the plane and able to bounce back once it is off the plane. Where if you have a pet dog who has, doesn't have the resilience built into it, yes, that dog is going to suffer some trauma. It may be short-lived. It may be something that lasts the dog's entire life. It is going to be a personal issue based on the dog's genetics, learning history, and of course self. I mean, if the dog is already sick when it gets on a plane, yeah, we're already going to have some issues there.
What about bored in a field in Tijuana or Riverside? That's not trauma. You know what is trauma? When that dog finally comes into your home and it feels the hard wood and goes, what the hell? And sees the ceiling fan and goes, oh my God, I'm going to die. The trauma isn't being where they're born. The trauma was coming to your house.
So I think he's just either misusing words or he really doesn't understand. Because here's the thing. What he's explaining, a dog leaving their environment that they have known and coming into your home, that is very stressful. But stress doesn't equal trauma. Stress is something that is significantly happens, and it triggers the release of chemicals into the brain and the body. Okay, so adrenaline, some cortisol. Okay, that's all there. Trauma, however, is cortisol and adrenaline that have a direct impact on brain function. It can reduce or shut down the hippocampus. It can disrupt integration of memories, which meaning the dog can't recall anything. And it can increase the amygdala function. So that's that emotion that you're seeing. So yes, is it going to be stressful for a dog to leave what they know and come into your home? Yes. How do we help them through that? We give them a secure place to be. We make sure that we help them navigate their new environment. We start to set expectations, and we help guide them. And by doing that, we can help them work through the stress, which builds resilience. Okay, so again, stress and trauma are two different things. What he's talking about here, not necessarily trauma. Can it be trauma for some dogs? Absolutely. But what we're talking about, that simple movement from being where you're born and coming into your home, that's just stress. And that can impact your dog, or you can help that dog navigate and increase your dog's resilience.
Then there's obvious traumas that maybe you've thought about or maybe your dog has had. This dog's older brother, who we trained since this dog's older brother and this dog since they were puppies, died a week ago, got put down because he couldn't move anymore. Now, the dog is 9 years old. That's like trauma happening to a 60-year-old person. It is not the same as trauma happening to a 6-year-old person. Okay? The death of a father to a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old boy, girl, is real trauma. The death of a father when somebody is 60 is not trauma.
I think what the most annoying thing is about this is that he needs to stop telling what is and what isn't trauma, because it is individualized. With the death of a housemate, so this dog who has known its sibling, obviously, for its entire life, so 9 years, is that dog traumatized from the death of that 9-year-old dog? Don't know. I would need more information. Am I having behavior problems? Am I having some changes in the dog's emotions, health overall? Is the dog eating, drinking? Is there anything specific you can tell me that says trauma? If I'm seeing these things, then we're going to look to say, is this just some stress and we have to teach some new routines because the routines are off? More than likely, it's just some stress. Death is a part of it. Now, if this dog witnessed a traumatizing death for its housemate, could that be trauma? Yes, that could be a significant event in that moment that released that adrenaline and that cortisol into the brain functions, okay, the functions of the brain, not just releasing it into the body and slightly into the brain, which is the stress. So again, I don't really want to say, yes, this dog's traumatized, or no, this dog isn't traumatized, but I think that we can't say that death of a parent for a 60-year-old person's not trauma, because that's an individual decision and emotion, because we don't know their relationship. So I don't think that we can sit here and say this is going to be traumatizing for every dog. This is not going to be traumatizing for every dog. And also, what is traumatizing is going to be subjective.
It shouldn't be trauma. That's how the world works. If you haven't wrapped your head around that, it's hard, but it's not trauma. This dog has gone through no freaking trauma ever. That's why when this dog jumps on anybody, I go knock it off and I grab her and I have no qualms about it.
So because the dog has not had trauma, he feels okay being mean because the dog is jumping. This is where you should start to worry about your trainer's thought process. If your trainer's thought process is that your dog has to feel stress, has to have some hardship, has to deal with that, that's a problem, because that's not caring for the welfare of your dog. We shouldn't make dogs have to feel traumatized or scared, or stress that goes beyond healthy stress, right? Healthy stress of being, learning how to self-regulate in the crate. Being in the crate the first few times is going to be a little stressful, but learning how to regulate that and not being stressed out the entire time. All right. So yeah, we do face stress, but it's not something that has to be out of balance. And just because if you've not faced it, again, if this dog's not having any problems, and I'm not hearing any behavior problems, I'm hearing the dog jumps because the owners probably allow it. If this dog's not having behavior problems, then why do I need to increase stress? Why? I don't understand this part.
So we have to be a little softer on that dog, understanding it has had trauma in its life, and we don't have to create hardship with that dog. You have to create hardship if your dog has had it easy.
I feel for his kids. I've said it so many times already. If the dog is not having any problems and the dog is just fine in life, I don't understand. I wonder if these people know that he is taking their dog, who seems to be a very well-rounded dog, and is creating hardship. For what purpose? I have no idea. I have no idea what his purpose is. Why would you create hardship? Tell me more. If this dog has behavior issues, tell me more. I need to know why we're having those issues. Is the dog's welfare at stake? Are we not taking in consideration the dog's genetics? Are we not meeting those needs? There are a lot of reasons. I'm not jumping straight to you got to give this dog hardship because he's never had it.
It's not trauma, but it is hardship to be taken away from your litter mates and your mother and maybe your father at 8 weeks old.
So here's one of the main issues. He's using hardship in place of stress or trauma. And hardship is not something that's happening to the dog. Hardship is, the definition of hardship, and here we'll just look this up right here. Hardship is a difficult or unpleasant situation or a condition that is hard to endure. So it's more about the situation, not about the effect that it is giving to the dog. So when a dog gets into a situation, they are going to have different emotions about it, and they're going to have those associations with it. They can either have a positive association, a neutral association, or a negative association. And that negative association can break down into different levels of stress. And of course, it can easily be traumatizing, depending on the situation. Not all hardships, not all situations are going to build resilience. Not all hard situations are going to impact the dog. It's going to depend a lot on the dog itself. So again, he's throwing around different words that are not used to describe what's happening. There's no release of chemicals that are affecting brain and body function with hardship, because hardship is talking about the situation, not about the effect that it's having on the dog.
Can you imagine how difficult that is for a dog to all of a sudden go, I don't sleep with my 5 brothers and sisters anymore?
There's a piece of humanity right there I just saw. He's right. I mean, I can imagine how stressful that is to have spent that much time with your siblings and that warmth, only to be taken away to somewhere a little not as warm.
That's why, and I've gotten heat for it, let your puppy sleep in bed with you. Be under the covers next to you as close to near his mom, brothers, and sisters that can possibly happen.
So I agree with the concept of this, of having that comfort for that puppy. I don't agree with the way of doing it because I see some cons there. So for me, what I like to do is you can place a crate on your bed, place the dog in the crate, and stick your hand in. They also have these great little snuggle toys that are warm with a heater inside of it. They got a little heartbeat on it. But I don't recommend that you actually have the dog outside of the crate for a couple of reasons. One, please, we don't want you to roll over onto the dog. Two, I don't want the dog to roll off the bed. Three, I don't want the dog waking up in the middle of the night, moving a few feet away and peeing, because guess what? That is what they did with their litter, is they got away from their litter, walked a few steps, peed, and then came back. So otherwise, you're just going to have pee all over your bed if you do that. Okay, so let me start over. Okay, so the concept I agree with, making sure that we have comfort for our puppies when we bring them home. I don't agree with the technique. So instead of having the dog in the bed with you, I like to have them in a crate, either right next to the bed where you can stick your hand in, they can feel you there, or you can put the crate on the bed. And you can, again, stick your hand in there. The dog can feel you. There's also some new toys out, and actually they're probably not that new, where they have a nice heater inside with a little heartbeat that the dog can snuggle up with. You can put in a bunch of warm blankets and towels and things of that nature as well. The reason I don't like having the dog sleep in the bed with you is for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want you to roll onto the dog. Two, I don't want the dog to roll off the bed. Three, I don't want the dog peeing in the bed, because what's happened here is when the dog was sleeping with the siblings, 99.9% chance that dog would wake up in the middle of the night, walk away a few steps, pee, and then come back and crawl back into the pile. So if this is going to happen on your bed, then you're going to wake up to pee spots on your bed. So I don't recommend that. And I need everybody to have a good night's sleep. If you're not having a good night's sleep, you're going to struggle with the puppy. And if the puppy's not having a good night's sleep, then that puppy's going to struggle with development. So
He is a jerk at a dog park. That's a whole different deal. Hardship. Grab him. Sit him down. Oh, Joel, you can't be mean to dogs. No, you can. You sometimes have to, because they have had nobody be mean to them their whole life.
I'm not the only one, right? I mean, if you are a pet parent and you just listen to that, please comment below if you are willing to still take your dog to him. This is so ridiculous. If the dog is a jerk at the dog park, then the dog has some issues and yes, needs to be worked on. And there are things that need to be done outside of that dog park. There are some foundational skills that we are missing. There is some communication that is missing from the owner to the dog. What the dog does not need is for someone to come up and bully it, to grab it and be mean to it, to create stress and trauma on purpose. For what reason? I guess in his mind, to fix whatever behavior problem he thinks he's seeing. So please, if you listen to that and he's okay with being mean to your dog because the dog's never had anybody be mean to it, would you use his service?
We're not going to say no. The people travel all the time. Hey! All right. This video is becoming what this video is. This dog came over and said, I want attention. I just talked to you about Connery and then Connery's need for love and how it's important. This is a giant schnauzer, as good of a guard dog as there is in the world. They're Harry Cane Corsos. He's intact. He's had a great life. He comes over. I push him away and he growls at me. This guy can't come over and growl at me or him because he gets pushed away. That is a sign of possibly too damn easy of a life.
A few very disturbing things with this video. Number one, he still doesn't understand dog communication and what growls mean. Number two, how angry he got because a dog used the dog's innate communication to communicate feelings, emotions. Open line of communication. No relationship can be built without that. And what he just did was get really pissed off because a dog was telling him that he didn't appreciate what he did. So let's talk about what he did. And I know some of you are going, but Nikki, the dog growled at him. All right, so growling is a level 2 calming signal. Dogs use calming signals to avoid conflict and confrontation. They are purposely done to avoid real altercations. Level 1, these signals are very passive. Things like head turns, ignoring, doing something else. Number 2, if those things don't work. Number 2 is your less passive. That's your growl and your snarl. Number 3, that would be your snap, your bite, and muzzle grab between dogs. So as they escalate, level 3 is what we call ritualized aggression. Let's talk about it in human terms. Level 1 would be me asking someone to get out of my space calmly. Could you please move out of my space? If that didn't work, level 2 would be me raising my voice. Level 3 would be me screaming and possibly pushing them away. Okay, so becoming physical. He immediately became physical when the giant schnauzer approached. He immediately jumped to level 3, which is ritualized aggression, when he simply could have ignored. He simply could have ignored the dog, and the dog would have gotten the communication that he doesn't want to be bothered, and he would have walked away. Instead, he escalated to a level 3, pushed him, and then was pissed because the dog communicated back with a level 2. So it's amazing to me how you watch these videos and he immediately was just pissed. And you can see that's about his ego and about how dare you treat me that way, instead of truly understanding what just transpired and how that communication was beautiful. Especially after he said that the giant schnauzer is one of the best guard dogs. Okay, let's say it's true. He's one of the best guard dogs. If that would have been a guard dog that didn't have really good skills, then you would have been bitten. He would have jumped to a level 3 when you pushed him away. But because this dog has much better control of his emotions than you do, he's just going to do the least amount that he has to do. So guys, please understand that growling is a part of a dog's communication. And if we are all about saying that we love dogs and we want to have these relationships with our dogs, we have to learn how they communicate. And we have to stop being a bully towards them when they communicate and being pissed off like everything is just about us. I am worked up on this because communication is so important to me. And to see this, it's disgusting. And I really want people to understand that this is not who you need to take advice from.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't know if you could hear the growl. I hope you can. I hope you could. You can't growl at me because you got pushed away because you came in for attention. I don't care if your parents give you attention all the time. I'm going to create the hardship in that schnauzer's life because it needs hardship in its life.
Anytime you hear somebody say, I don't care what you want, that's a problem. Because when you are working with an organism with its own brain, we have to know that compromise has to be there. If you don't have compromise, we're going to have a hard struggle with any relationship. Think about it, all right? Any relationship needs compromise, communication. Right? I mean, we can go through all those other things, but if you have compromise in communication, you're probably going to have trust. Again, he's talking that he believes that this happened because the dog hasn't had any hardship. So again, it doesn't make any sense. It's almost like he's making excuses to be mean to these dogs. He's making excuses to say that he has to be a bully in order to make these dogs better. And honestly, that's just bully bullshit.
Trauma does not build character. Hardship builds character. Trauma can build character if you can get over it.
If you ever watch a lot of his videos, you'll see how he double talks. He'll say trauma doesn't build character. Well, trauma can build character sometimes. Stress doesn't build resilience. Well, stress can build resilience. You'll hear it all the time because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Again, hardship is about a situation. It's the situation itself. It's not how it's affecting the animal. So you don't get over trauma. Trauma is not something that people or dogs will typically get over. What you do learn is how to manage the effects of it. You learn how to self-regulate. You learn coping skills and coping mechanisms. And sometimes one of those coping mechanisms is medication. So you don't just get over trauma. And when you hear this from someone who claims to be a professional, please know that this guy is not going to help your dog with trauma. He's only going to cause it. So trauma is not going to build character. Unfortunately, trauma is something I don't wish upon anyone. But unfortunately, that most people do suffer from trauma, and I wish no trauma upon dogs because they can't even verbally communicate that to us, and they don't even understand it. All right, they can't say, "Yeah, I'm traumatized," but it was, I had a rough childhood. All right, okay, you had a rough childhood, so you had some difficult hardships. Okay, was there anything specific that traumatized you? Yes, I would often come home and no one would be there, and 80% of the time I came home, no one was there, and I felt abandoned. Okay, so your effect is abandonment. Okay, that traumatized you. So we don't get over it. We just learn to cope and deal with it. And so, again, please understand that you don't have to create these things. You don't need to create hardships. I think that's ridiculous. I think that life has stress enough during the day, during your everyday routine. And here are the thing with dogs. Dogs are not built for this world. Dogs are not built for the constant noise that are in our homes. Dogs are not built for the constant barrage of information being thrown our way. Dogs are not built to deal with the 5,000 cars that drive past your house every day. Dogs are not built to deal with the schedule that a lot of people keep in their home. That is what's stressful for dogs. That is where we're going to help them build resilience. That is something that is a part of life that we have to help them through. We have to look at their welfare and understand that maybe they're not built for those 5,000 cars a day. So we need to either move or that dog needs a better home. And it says nothing about the person. It's about understanding the dog's needs. We don't need to create more stress on our dogs when life gives it every single day.